Welcome back, everybody. I'm very happy to introduce the next panel to all of you. Just for all the new people in the room, this panel will be mostly in English, I assume. If you want to speak in your own language, you're welcome because we have the interpretation available. I am requesting also for the panelists, before I introduce you, please speak slowly. If you do not, I will intervene because we have interpretation online for all the participants. And I'm very happy to welcome the next panel with us now with the title Smart Bargaining in Europe's Services Sector, What is Needed? I'm happy to introduce your moderator, Stan de Spiegelaere from UNI Europa. And Stan, please welcome your team.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So we have planned next to the sectoral panels also what we have called a political panel to talk not about how to build up collective bargaining only from bottom up, but also from the policy side. Now, in order to make sure that our dear guests understand where they are very well, I'm just going to make a small description. So we are here in a conference on collective bargaining in the services sector. So we're concentrated on private services sectors. And we are concentrating on a number of countries which are not the classic Western European countries. So in the audience today, we have both trade unionists and researchers from countries like Czech Republic, Slovakia, Romania, Hungary, Serbia, North Macedonia, and Turkey. So we're why do we in this project concentrate on those countries and on the service sectors? Because in both cases, we know that collective bargaining coverage is more challenging and the coverage is much weaker in those sectors and in those countries. So if the European Union wants to evolve towards better coverage of collective bargaining, then we need to concentrate on the challenges of those sectors and those countries. So that's the setting that we're in. We have three speakers. We have Diana from the European Commission. We have Branislav from the European Parliament and Oliver Roethig from UNI Europa. And I would propose to start with you, Diana. From the European Commission side, I mean, we have a very important directive, which is called the Minimum Wage Directive, which is next to establishing procedures for setting minimum wages, also has as objective to promote collective bargaining. It was being challenged in court. You might know there was a court case against the directive, but that is now over, and most of the directive is standing stronger than ever. So now we need to go towards the implementation of the directive with national action plans on the promotion of collective bargaining. And one of the questions that we have as trade unionists is what is the role of the European Commission in this, in making sure that those national action plans are good, are ambitious, are followed, are actually implemented? Could you explain a little bit how the European Commission will go about that? If you just push the button, and yeah, there we go.
All right, now it's on. So thank you, Stan. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here today because as Stan has explained, I worked at the European Commission, but a bit more than that, I am the team leader for sectoral social dialogue in the social dialogue unit of DG Employment. So I'm very happy to see actually the result of one of the projects that we are funding. And in such an important field, because I think the private services is a very big sector, if not the biggest. Yeah, I mean, it's a multi-sector, absolutely. So it's, there you go. So this is really important and I can only welcome it. Now, it's not our unit who deals with the Minimum Wage Directive, but we have been looking at it, of course. We have been a little bit involved because, as you know, it has an important collective bargaining part that we are also super happy to see stayed. Article 4 from the directive is, I think, is of a crucial importance when it comes to collective bargaining. Now, when we look at Article 4, there is a distinction that I wanted to make. First of all, there are two obligations coming from Article 4.2, more specifically, the one that refers to the member states having a lower than 80% collective bargaining coverage. which is one, the obligation to provide the framework of enabling conditions for collective bargaining, and the second one is the obligation to come up with an action plan to increase collective bargaining coverage. As you certainly know, the 80% is not a target in itself to be achieved. It's only a trigger. So it works in the sense that member states who do not have 80%, and only about 9 member states in the Union have above 80% collective bargaining coverage. So those who are below, they need to come up with an action plan to promote collective bargaining coverage. Now, what will the Commission do with the action plans? So by the end of this year, normally the member states should send their action plans to the Commission, taking into account that this is an obligation of effort to increase collective bargaining coverage and not of result. The Commission will first and foremost look at whether the action plan is there or not. This is a palpable thing. This is something that the Commission can look at. So it can indeed take measures if the member state does not adopt an action plan, although they should. Then, following the submission of the action plan, the Commission will need to actually draft a report and send this report every second year to the European Parliament. And the first report should come in the first semester of 2026. Let's follow up closely when this report comes. We will see when the colleagues have drafted it and see what it contains in the end. The diversity of systems will, of course, and should be taken into account when assessing the action plans. It couldn't be otherwise because there is no one size fits all for social dialogue. So the directive itself says that the diversity of systems should be taken into account. I have some notes, so I'm trying to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Yeah, maybe this is a little bit of a further perspective, I would say, but in 2029, the Commission will also have to make an entire evaluation or an evaluation of the entire directive. And again, report to the co-legislators on how it went, what's the reviewing the implementation of the directive and whether it was fit for purpose or not. Finally, on the action plans, we do expect them to progressively increase collective bargaining coverage rates. There is also an obligation for the member states to review the action plans regularly. So this is another element to be taken into account. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So we're talking here about national action plans to promote collective bargaining in the different member states. And we have our second guest is not only a member of the European Parliament, but has experience as a national policy maker in the field of labor and collective bargaining. So in Slovakia, to be specific. So I was wondering, building on that experience, what do you think that a country like Slovakia, but I'm talking about more than Slovakia, the bigger region. What are one of the most effective ways, according to you, to promote collective bargaining from a policy point of view?
Well, I think that there are two main tools which, based on my experience from Slovakia, should be used for improvement of collective bargaining and the coverage of workers by collective agreements. The first is focused in, let's say, in a field of education. We need much more to encourage our people to do collective bargaining, and I think that a very important tool how to do it is to extend the level or increase the level of their education. And therefore, I think that your project is very useful for that. Because speaking about education, I think that very important is exchange of best practices or any experiences. Even bad experiences can be used as a interesting tool how not to do the things or what to avoid in a practice in other countries. So exchange of experiences, sharing of best practices. This is something what I'm absolutely sure we need. speaking, let's say, on behalf of Slovakia. And I think that I may say it also on behalf of Slovak trade unions, because this is my background. In the past, I served as a state secretary for labor social affairs in the Slovakia, but originally I came from trade union family, and also now I feel myself to be a representative of trade unions in the European Parliament. So I think that from my perspective, the education, sharing of best practices, education focused on legal framework which are available for collective bargaining, how to implement this legal framework. This is something what really could help, what could help to improve the quality of collective bargaining, and also to extend collective bargaining, and finally the coverage of workers in a service sectors by collective agreements. I'm saying it because it's based on, and let me share with you one particular experience. Some years ago, it has been some 10 years ago, when I served as a state secretary, we introduced the project, which then that time has been called Center for Social Dialogue. The project has been financed by the European Social Fund, and through this project, we invested to improvement of human capacities of social partners, both on analytical level or analytical capacities, and also personal capacities directly related to the collective bargaining. And one my friend who represented that time the management of national railways, once he met me and he told me, I was absolutely surprised how changed the approach of trade unionists in our company to the collective bargaining. They came and he worked there. He has been working there for a very long time. And he told me, for the first time, I feel shortages in collective bargaining on my side, and I'm surprised how prepared they came for a first round of collective bargaining. They were absolutely prepared. They had some economic analyses, they had the analysis of the legislation, everything. And he told me, I'm absolutely surprised what happened with them. And I told him, because we started this project. And through this project, we started to prepare. Even we provided even communication trainings to the trade union representatives responsible for collective bargaining, and this is the particular example that it works. That even the partners on employers' side may be surprised how trade unionists are well prepared for a collective bargaining. So education. And the second issue or second tool is to improve security of trade union work at the company level. Unfortunately, in Slovakia, during last 2-3 years, we face a wave of dismissal of dismissal of trade unionists from the companies. A wave. If we just few months ago, we made let's say investigation and then analysis, and we found that during last 10 years, between 2012 and 2022, we found 3 particular cases when trade union representatives at the company level has been fired. During 10 years, 3 cases. During the last 2 years, 11 cases. So what we found is that we need to improve the position and the let's say the security of the position of trade unions at the company level. And therefore, just 2 weeks ago, I agreed with our minister to amend the labor code in order to introduce much more stricter rules for dismissal of trade unionists. Because what we found is that after, even if this dismissal is mostly illegal. However, the average time when courts decided on the dismissal as an illegal act done by employer in Slovakia is 7-8 years. We even found the cases which took 11 years from dismissal to the final court decision. 11 years. And I think that it's absolutely obvious to everyone that if ordinary workers, if ordinary trade unionists face such a situation, they see that their leader faces the court for years. This is something what makes them afraid to be active in a collective bargaining, in doing anything like as a trade unionist. So therefore, my last sentence, therefore, I think that not just the court decision on directive on minimum wages, but also adoption of revision of the directive on European work councils is or could be a very important legislative step forward, because as a part of this revision, we also introduced some new obligation of member states regarding to let's say security of trade union work. So the second issue is to make the position of trade union representative much more secure.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it really is reflecting a lot of the stuff that we've heard in the previous panel, and some of the people in the room can personally tell you stories about this kind of things. And I'm pretty sure that we'll get some reactions later. But before that, I would like to go to Oliver. So we've had, let's say, the European vision. We had a national vision, European Commission vision, national vision. Now it's time for the European Trade Union vision. In the previous parts of this conference, we've seen that from services sectors, there's a lot of specific challenges that services sectors face in collective bargaining. And I was wondering, from a point of view of UNI Europa, what are some of the main leverage points that you see in how to improve collective bargaining in the service sectors?
I think the first point I want to make is collective bargaining is a key criteria for functioning social dialogue and indeed for a functioning social model in Europe. So without, we don't have this. So we had our Congress this year, and the slogan was forward through collective bargaining, real say, more pay, and better working conditions. And I think that's what trade unions are about, and our means is collective bargaining. So it's really in the center of our activities. And for us, when we look at the economy, we need this in the center there as well, because otherwise it doesn't work. When we look from a trade union perspective, there are really three elements what we can see how we can engage. The first one is bottom up, really strengthening our own organizing capacity, our trade union structure, to actually negotiate for our members in an effective way. But not only negotiate for them, but actually bring them into the negotiations. I mean, it's just about them, and we're a democratic organization, so we want to give them real say, and that is really one of the challenges we feel, that whether it is at the workplace, but also in society at large, workers, and that's a majority of the citizens, have the feeling nobody really cares what they are thinking and want. And I think with collective bargaining, we can change it, because there it's the closest to you. So bottom up, strengthening it, and we're having in Central and Eastern Europe, we have our organizing centers in Central and Eastern Europe, of course, and we have a new one for 2 years now in Southeastern Eastern Europe, based in Romania, where we really try to push it. The second point is really top down, and that's for us here at European level. What framework can we have at European level? We talked already about the Minimum Wage Directive. Today, just less than an hour ago, the Quality Jobs Roadmap came out, and I'm considerably happy, not totally, but happy that they talk about strengthening and promoting collective bargaining, as well as public procurement, so using some of the tools. And I think it's important, and as Branislav said already, we have some issues here. First of all, trade unions are not sufficiently protected. trade union busting should be a crime. In some countries it is, in some others it isn't. And we just have US companies who have this as a business model and come to Europe to try to bring this here as well. The other issue, which also at European level is often not discussed, collective bargaining is good, but a key part of collective bargaining is the ability in the last resort to go to strike. And if you don't have this, then it makes it a bit difficult. And then, of course, we have to increase membership. The aim is 80% coverage. Well, as a trade unionist, I say it's 100%. But I mean, let's at least aim at the 80%. And when we want to go there, I think one of the challenges is capacity building. In the current ESF, we have some money allocated ring fence for capacity building. I think that is important that this stays in the new financial budget for the next 7 years. And I've seen in several countries now in Central and Eastern Europe where our unions try to get the money, and they get the money. It's extremely difficult. I give you one example. We had one union saying, okay, we want to do something at national level, and we would like to have UNI Europa as a social partner at European level as a partner in there. And the first comment was, yeah, but you have to do, how do you say? You basically have to do a procurement one. There could be others in there as well. So totally absurd. And then you just have points in there as if the trade union movement at European level, the social partners are a consultancy rather than the representative of the workers. And that brings me there to this third element, and that's a bit sideways, especially when we look at Central and Eastern Europe. The major players in the markets are multinational companies who are not coming from Central and Eastern Europe. And very often they have the tendency to say, well, you know, I'm a foreign company, so I don't really want to intervene in domestic affairs, so I stay out of it. Which is all right when you have about 0.5% of market coverage, but if the three big ones have about 80%, that's just taking your responsibility not seriously. So we are really trying through our European Works Councils, trade union alliances, to push this in this direction that they actually have to work on social dialogue and collective bargaining at national level, and that's their responsibility. And of course, we want to have sectoral social dialogue in the first place, and we're working there in some of the sectors also together with our social partners here at European level. But I think there, also from the political side, at the national level, at the European level, a bit more push to all of us, and especially on the employers, to actually engage in this is important. And Diana was saying, you know, services, private services is an important sector. We are the biggest sector in the economy, far over 50%. It's a growing sector. And we are a sector where we have a lot of small and medium-sized companies. We don't have the big factories or public administration, so it's much more difficult to organize. So actually, we need more help and support because it's just more cost intensive, but it's also much easier in a big crowd to fight back than when you're in a small crowd. So it's really also an issue of freedom from fear. And there, as Branislav said it, we need to protect our members. If you want to engage in a trade union and you see that one of your colleagues who tried this before is sacked, that's not good. So we really have to make sure that in the end, we criminalize trade union busting. Yeah. That's a labor crime, and it should be not something where you pay a fine from your petty cash. It should have consequences for the people who are responsible. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Oliver. Diana, I see you writing a lot of stuff down. So I'm guessing that first of all, we need an extra notebook here on stage. And second, I'm guessing that you have a lot of reactions. So feel free to react to the other speakers if you want. But I think one of the next question I would like to ask, and then I'm coming to you, Branislav, again, is obviously you said it, and it has also been noted by the other speakers. The Minimum Wage Directive is not the only way that the European Commission can or might promote collective bargaining, and maybe also through social dialogue, through the work that you do. Could you explain a little bit more about the other ways or the plans that the European Commission or the European Union has to strengthen the capacity of the social partners, collective bargaining in general, social dialogue in general? And feel free to react also to the other speakers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Once again, I think, yeah, also in what I will say next, we will touch upon indeed what has been said. Now, I find everything that's being said interesting. I'm taking notes. also for myself, because we always keep these, take them with us, and then we use them in our work after that as well. So it's always useful to have. Now, when I'm being asked what do I do for a job, is that I say that I help the social partners have a stronger voice, in a sense, because we are working with them in the sectoral social dialogue committees. Of course, those are closest to me, also in the cross industry social dialogue committee, and so on and so forth. And we see also the work between the EU level and the national level, and this is very useful. Also, coming back to collective bargaining, this is really the core business of social dialogues. I mean, there is also the tripartite part, but indeed, without collective bargaining between the workers and employers' sides, we wouldn't, we see social dialogue, and social dialogue is really an important part of the construction of the European Union. So it's, we fully agree on its objective and on its aim. Speaking about public procurement a little bit, because you have asked, Dan. We can look, of course, at what there is. So we have the Minimum Wage Directive, and it also has provisions on strengthening actually protection. We have the Council recommendation, let's not forget, on strengthening social dialogue. It's a non-binding document, but it has very, very interesting and important elements on supporting it in the member states and on guiding member states towards the implementation of the Pillar Principle 8 on social dialogue. We have the Platform Work Directive as well. And I was very pleased to see in the Platform Work Directive this obligation to create virtual meeting spaces for workers, where the workers can actually get organized and discuss with each other to get organized, as well as with their trade unions. So again, one step forward towards the representation in the future. We used to say future world of work. Now, even our EVP, our commissioner, she says it's the now world of work, because it's happening. Then there will be there is the Quality Jobs Roadmap already, and there will be a Quality Jobs Act. And one of the parts of the Quality Jobs Act that will be in focus is enforcement. This also comes closer to the protection of trade union leaders, but not only, it's also enforcement in general, because you're mentioning, Branislav, indeed, the very long procedures in court. And it's normal, you have a directive, then it's being implemented in the member states, and then it's being taken forward by the national authorities. It's beyond, it's out of our hands in a sense. And if enforcement of the national law transposing a directive is not happening soon enough and properly enough, then we have a problem. And even if we go to court and we get our rights recognized and so on, it takes very long. So I was a lawyer, I know, I've seen that. And indeed, my conclusion was as well that it's better to solve the issues before you get to court. For procurement authorities, we spend around 50% of EU GDP. It's quite an amount on public procurement, and this can be indeed a powerful tool to boost quality jobs and boost sustainable growth there. And there are already provisions in the public procurement directives. They are already requiring employers to respect labor law and practices, what is in the member states. We have this taken over as well in the minimum directive, in the minimum wage directive. We also mentioned it in the council recommendation. There are also make clauses that allow contracting authorities to exclude employers who do not abide by labor obligations from procurement provisions and other non-binding tools. But it is true that in a broad part, the lowest price ratio is still the most used criterion when coming to public procurement. And you will see in the quality jobs roadmap announced as well that in 2026, the Commission will actually explore how to better promote a socially responsible public procurement. And in this respect, I would also mention the dedicated hearings that we have with the social partners on the public procurement directives, both on evaluation as well as on the revision of the public procurement directives. And there, the recognized social partners have the possibility to bring in feedback and contribute to the process.
Okay, great. That's some good news, I think. Let's go to Branislav again. So previously I asked you what you think could be done from the national level from your experience in Slovakia, but obviously now you're an MEP, right? You work at the European Parliament. What do you think your role as European Parliament member of the European Parliament now could be to strengthen, to help the trade unions where you come from, to help the countries like Slovakia where you come from to strengthen their social dialogue systems and their collective bargaining?
No public contract without collective agreement. European Commission, yeah. European Commission just, I think 2 weeks ago, just opened public consultations on revision of public procurement legislation. And according to the work plan of the Commission, we expect that the revision will be presented in third quarter, I think in third quarter of next year, or even second maybe. So that will be in my opinion, in my view, this will be the main challenge for us who wants to improve collective bargaining and the position of trade unions. This is something what I present in the European Union from the very beginning of this mandate. And this is something what I communicated also in pre-election campaigns in Slovakia. Because let's say in a capitalistic world is absolutely obvious that the commercial relations are the most important tool how to steer the society, let's say, and therefore the public procurement, I think that could be the most efficient tool how to improve collective bargaining and how to extend coverage of workers by collective agreements. I will add to Diana's number, the figure, one more. 2 trillion euros is a word of public procurement, is a word of annual public procurement around the European Union. So at European, at national, and also at the regional and local level. I mean, public procurement, which is proceed by local or regional governments. 2 trillion euro is a huge amount of money, which could be, and in my opinion, should be used for improvement of social, of the quality of life of workers and quality of working conditions. So definitely for me, and I presented it 2 weeks ago at a meeting of Parliamentary Intergroup for Trade Unions, for me, the main challenge, the most important activity, let's say legislative activity in the European Parliament for next year will be focused on public procurement, on the revision of public procurement rules in the European Union. And then what will be important will be a transposition of these new European rules at the national level. Because, and this is my second point, I think that what we as a members of European Parliament, even if now we are speaking about the European level, however, I think that what we as a members of European Parliament can do and even should do is to, let's say, to utilize informal power of our position at the national level as well. So not just at the European one. Because I don't know how it works in your countries, but in Slovakia, for example, the position of member of European Parliament has a value. It's a value. And it has an impact. And I think that therefore it is important not just to decide on legislation framework in the European Parliament, in the Council, but it is important, and I think that it is integral part of our work as MEPs, is to make sure that this European legislation framework is then properly implemented at the national level. And therefore, for example, I'm leaving Brussels today afternoon, and tomorrow I have a meeting with the president of Slovak Trade Union Confederation, and I want to talk to her how we are going to implement or to make a pressure from the side of trade unions to implement, let's say, latest European legislations, and I mean two directives, minimum wage and European work councils, this. It makes for me important also one additional idea which Oliver gave me just a few minutes ago, mentioning multinationals. I think that improvement of position of European work councils should be used by us as a trade unionist at the national level for improvement of our position, because in Slovakia, almost 80% of economy is managed and in fact is owned by multinationals. So more than 80% of Slovak workers work in multinational companies. And unfortunately, our experience is that their behavior in our country is totally different how they operate in their domestic, let's say, countries. Mentioning, for example, banking sector. Few years ago, we faced the situation that Slovak Banking Association refused to conduct collective bargaining at sectoral level. They simply announced to the trade unionists, we change our legal form, and therefore, according to the law, we are not obliged to make the collective bargaining. And this is the association, the organization consisting of Raiffeisen operating in Slovakia, Unicredit Bank operating in Slovakia, Intesa BCI operating in Slovakia. And I, as a state secretary, I went to their mothers and I asked them, do you conduct collective bargaining in Austria, in Italy, in other countries? And they informed me, yes, of course. In Italy, Unicredit Bank never think, management of Unicredit Bank in Italy never think that they can refuse a proposal for collective agreement. Raiffeisen Bank in Austria never even can think, just privately think that they will refuse communicate with their trade unions. But in Slovakia, they do. They do. So therefore, what I think is also important is to improve position of European Working Council, to mobilize trade unionists around the European Union to be as much active as possible in European work councils, and to use European work councils as a tool for solidarity among trade unionists around the Europe. That will be also very important. So that means, just to summarize, no public contract without collective agreement for next year, the most important legislative task, and implementation of European proper implementation of the European legislative framework at the national level. I think that for let's say next period, for next year, I see this as the most important for MEP who cooperates with trade union. That's it.
That's a very, very clear answer. We're gonna go. I'm gonna ask a last question to Oliver, and then I'm gonna turn it to the room for some Q&A. So please already prepare some questions that you have 5 more minutes to prepare them. So Oliver, we have been talking a little bit about public procurement, and basically, if you look at the rules on public procurement, for many countries, it's rather easy. Right, you just ask the company to follow the sectoral agreements. But we are here in a room with a lot of countries who don't have sectoral agreements, or where mostly the collective bargain is on the company level. How do you see that the public procurement can strengthen collective bargaining in countries like Slovakia, where, for example, the banks just say, sorry, we don't do the sectoral level anymore?
Well, I mean, first of all, of course, one of the purpose to have the public procurement directive pushing them to sector collective bargaining, because I mean, one point is quite clear, and the other, when the Commission will be reviewing the national action plans, if you want to reach or come close to 80%, you need sector collective bargaining, otherwise it doesn't work. So that's basically where we need to push, and I think that has to be made very clear by the social partners, but also by the European institutions. More practical, of course, indeed, especially in Central and Eastern Europe, we have too many countries where we don't have sectoral multi-company collective agreements. But there it's easy as well. I mean, Malta is one of the examples. If you have a collective agreement, even at company level, you should get some brownie points for this, you know, because collective bargaining is a value in itself, not only in the terms of industrial relations, because also for the fabric of society and the European social model. And what we don't want is that, and this is a bit the problem with the system at the moment, that many business were, let's say, not too friendly to workers. I mean, they say as soon as you restrict our right to do whatever we want, it's discrimination. What happened with the current system of public procurement is it's actually discriminating as those companies who have good industrial relations and the relationship has a collective agreement. Because especially in the services sectors, the easiest way to compete is by the labor costs. And of course, when you have a collective agreement, you have good standards of labor. And when you compete on the labor cost and you go below this because you don't have a collective agreement, you kick out those companies. And I was just talking to our commerce employers, and one of the points they were saying, and it's in their case even clearer, because the big providers from which retail companies buy their products, there are only very few. So their prices are basically fixed and you can't negotiate very much. So the only thing which is actually left are the social costs, the labor costs. So everybody is competing on this. And when we, as a system, require basically, well, you can do whatever you want and you get public money for doing this as well, then public money is financing actually breaching the system, breaching good working conditions, and that we have to change. And there with the public procurement directive, with a revision, we have possibilities. I mean, making sure that if there is a multi-company sectoral agreement, then those guys get the preference. You have to promote it. And if it's not there, then you need to get award points, where you have to make sure that everybody who is on the way as a company gets not discriminated against, but rather promoted to make sure the society works and the social system we have in Europe work. One last point I want to make, and you were talking about learning from each other. Some of you might have seen this as a project we finished last year, I think. We had, I think, 15 countries and asked, so what are the major obstacles and solutions for multi-company collective bargaining? And we put this into a card stack. So it's really interesting, and it's a very simple way to find out what happens. And the interesting part for us was we got everyone together, and everybody has, of course, a different background, and you only think about your background, and they said, oh, we never thought about this one. Yeah. Let's try this. And I think that's the strength of the trade union movement at European level. And finally, the trade unions are not an NGO. We are not looking for the Commission and others to regulate our affairs. We as social partners, we have the strength of self-regulation through collective bargaining. And in the discussion here about red tape and smart regulation, I think the easiest way, at least in the world of work, is empower the trade unions and the employers to negotiate on an eye level, and then you don't need much less legislation and red tape, and we have basically positive deregulation in that sense. Thank you.
Positive deregulation. Okay, I need to think about that one. We're going to turn now to the room, and I see that there's already a lot of questions. So Fiona, maybe we start there, and I also see that over there.
Bună ziua! Vă mulțumesc că sunt aici și am asistat la o dezbatere foarte interesantă. Sunt Vasile Gogescu, președintele Federației Sindicatelor din Comerț din România. Din păcate, pentru restul publicului am 3 întrebări pentru fiecare din cei 3 paneliști. Încep cu onoratul deputat Branislav Ondruš. O întrebare, mai mult cu o plângere, să spunem, o lamentație. În România, în sistemul de învățământ public, nu se vorbește absolut nimic despre negocieri colective sau sindicate. Termină copiii școala, intră în câmpul muncii și habar nu au că există negocieri colective sau că există un organism care poate să-i ajute în activitatea lor profesională. Nu credeți că ar fi timpul ca în toate statele Uniunii Europene aceste lucruri să fie prevăzute în legislația europeană și după aia în legislația națională? A doua întrebare este pentru onorata doamnă Crumpăna. Știți ce se întâmplă în România? Știți problemele care sunt cu criza economică în care ne aflăm și care a fost direcționată spre plată, mai ales către persoanele vulnerabile, cei cu salarii mici și pe ei afectează cel mai mult și pensionarii cu pensii foarte mici. Iar acum se discută despre înghețarea salariului minim pe economie, cel prevăzut în legislația națională care a transpus directiva privind salariul minim european. Cum credeți că vor rezista angajații din România pe o inflație de 10% care a fost anul ăsta, pe o inflație prognozată de unii numai la 6%, dar eu zic tot de 10 va fi și la anul, cu veniturile pe care le au astăzi și aici mă adresez cel mai mult dumneavoastră, în spiritul declarației doamnei Mânzatu, care a spus că dacă nu se mărește și dacă se îngheață salariul minim pe economie în România, nu va fi declanșată o procedură de infringement asupra României. Că poate rămâne salariul minim la nivelul actual. Iar pentru Oliver e ceva care am discutat și în pauză. Revin. Legislația din România a fost schimbată, drepturile la negocieri colective sunt mult mai clare, mult mai ușor de realizat, se pot întâmpla. Problema este că negocierea colectivă actuală este total dezechilibrată. Sindicatele din România, conform legislației actuale, aproape nu au dreptul să facă grevă. Este aproape imposibil de ajuns la o grevă legală, fiindcă în România o grevă trebuie să o confirme justiția dacă este legală sau nu. Neavând dreptul la grevă, negocierile sunt total dezechilibrate, știind angajatorii că efectiv nu ai ce să le faci. Fiindcă, într-adevăr, dialogul social se suportă cu niște cheltuieli. Dar cheltuielile cu dialogul social sunt mult mai mici decât cheltuielile cu o grevă, cu un conflict social de amploare. Nu vrem să ajungem la grevă. Nu asta e dorința noastră. Am organizat sindicatele în spiritul dialogului social. Dar atâta timp cât nu ai alt instrument prin care să combați politica antisindicală, antinegociere, antidrepturi pentru angajați, este absolut necesar și dreptul la grevă. Mulțumesc!
Sperăm ca delegația României să nu plictisească auditoriu. Eu tot din România vin. Sunt președintele Federației Sindicatelor din Asigurări și Bănci și vreau mai întâi de toate să salut intervențiile paneliștilor, pentru că am ascultat astăzi nu intervenție o intervenție de europarlamentari, ci o intervenție de sindicaliști autentici. Și asta ne bucură foarte mult pentru că ne dă încredere că chiar putem să avem niște parteneri serioși în ceea ce vă privește pe dumneavoastră. De asemenea, vreau să salut Comisia Europeană pentru două instrumente extrem de utile și de importante pentru noi ca sindicaliști. Vorbesc de data asta din partea română și aici vorbesc de directiva privind salariul minim și directiva privind transparența salarială. Sunt lucruri extraordinar de importante pentru noi în negocieri, pentru că noi suntem privilegiați în sensul că ne numărăm printre cei 80% care participăm la negocierea contractului colectiv de muncă. Totodată, apreciem faptul că la nivelul Comisiei Europene se așteaptă un raport al țărilor privind modul de implementare în ceea ce privește negocierea contractului colectiv de muncă și gradul de acoperire de 80%. Dar cred că nu este suficient numai atât și am să vă spun cel puțin partea română. Noi românii suntem foarte buni specialiști în a prezenta proiecte și ne a angaja în lucruri extraordinar de mari, dar suntem puțin mai reticenți în ceea ce privește modul de implementare a acestora. De aceea am recomandat și Comisiei și Parlamentului să ne sprijiniți printr-o monitorizare mai atentă asupra modului de implementare a acestor angajamente. Pentru că, în opinia noastră, 2029 față de 2026 este o perioadă destul de lungă, ori în această perioadă ar trebui să fim mai atenți și să vedem cum putem să facem acești pași pentru ca în 2029 să ne atingem acest obiectiv a gradului de acoperire de 80% în ceea ce privește contractele colective de muncă. Și un alt lucru, și cu asta am încheiat, am dorit ca acest grad de acoperire să nu fie numai la nivel național, pentru că eu vă spun un lucru, poate fi foarte simplu să negociem un contract la nivel național, dar dacă nu reușim să acoperim și sectoarele de activitate de la nivel național cu 80%, vom fi în situația de a avea un contract colectiv la nivel național, dar nu vom avea măcar 80% din contractele colective de la nivel sectorial. Vă mulțumesc!
We're going to take two more questions here, but please keep them rather short, because otherwise we're going to run out of time.
Okay, I'll be short. Fuck, I hear myself. Regarding the directives. So we have now a trend in Croatia. It's happening. I don't know how many times it will happen, but with this public procurement and in general talking about collective bargaining agreements, employers are incentivized to find unions that are not maybe so active or not so good, or the same unions that didn't act 20 years to fight for a sectoral agreement or are just too weak or inactive, will not go into that, to find them and sign the symbolic CBA. Symbolic CBA means collective bargaining agreement. It satisfied all three sides. State is satisfied because it can present numbers to the upper echelons. Then the employer is satisfied because he gets access to the money, and the union is satisfied because it saved him from dying, because they were slowly just dying in the sector. So actually we have two sectoral bargaining agreements signed in Croatia on this wave of signing. It's in wood industry and retail industry. Retail industry is actually big in Croatia. It just formalized the bad working conditions, the conditions that already existed, that were already a standard and they're bad. It just formalized it, but also that's the way to keep other unions out of the process. So the unions that were inactive or unwilling to act or even yellow are put in the position to now again represent the workers, even though the workers don't want them or didn't do anything for workers. Now they get representation, they get allied with the employer, and now they have a common enemy, a union that comes from outside to actually fight for better working conditions. So the question is, I don't expect clear answers, but did you think about it, how to prevent this to be just a pro forma activity to enable employers to get public procurement money and actually to be a barrier to trade union organizing that is actually organizing and fighting for the better working conditions?
Thank you. My name is Marta Kahancová. I'm a researcher from Slovakia, and I very closely follow all EU-level regulations and development. And I wonder, how can we bring all of this that it's happening, all these regulatory efforts and bargaining, public procurement, the discussion on the quality of jobs, further to the jobs that are not based on a standard employment relationship? Because a lot is happening also in the services sector, where talking about bargaining doesn't make sense right now, because there is a lot of undeclared work or unreported hours, a lot of outsourcing, a lot of all kinds of consultancy services in the finance sector, a lot of all kinds of non-standard work, which is currently outside of the scope of regular collective bargaining. Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna first go back to the panel and then see if we have enough time for a second round. A lot of very interesting questions. I'm really happy that I'm the moderator and I don't have to answer those. But I'm gonna give you, I don't know who wants to start with some reactions. Branislav, go ahead.
Okay, so unfortunately, to the question regarding to education, to the formal education, unfortunately, the European Union hasn't competencies in this field. The formal education is in competence of national states, so we can't adopt any legislation, let's say, which will prescribe how the formal education should look like. However, I think that what you can do is what we are doing in Slovakia, and to utilize European Social Fund to organize some, let's say, additional education, at least at the university level. For example, we have opportunity to finance from the ASF the programs which are implemented in cooperation with students' organization. We can organize and we organize the discussions with them, different events, conferences, etc., etc. So there is quite a huge room for cooperation between trade union and universities as such, and also between trade unions and students' organization. And immediately when students leave the universities and they start to work, immediately the Slovak, for example, the Slovak Trade Union Confederation has a program focusing on those early workers, early coming workers, in order to immediately to communicate them existence of the trade unions and the competencies and advantages of membership in trade union, etc., etc. And I remember that our Slovak Trade Union organization, which is a member of UNI Europa, for a long time organizes in cooperation with these schools in the middle level. I don't know how to call it in English. These vocational schools, let's say. They organize for a long term. They organize the activities focusing on knowledge of occupational safety and health rules for students of vocational schools, and it is organized. It is very popular among the schools. It is supported even by employers because they prefer to hire young workers who are aware of OSH rules. And since this activity is like a contest against among the vocational schools, and through this activity, which is organized by trade unions, students are informed about the existence, competencies, etc., etc. So unfortunately, from the European level, we have no competencies how directly to influence the structure and the content of formal educational programs at the national level. However, I have absolutely no doubt that by sharing best practices among trade unions across the Europe, and by utilization of ESF, there are quite efficient ways how to improve knowledge and public awareness of trade unions among the students.
We're going to go to Diana. There was quite a lot of questions to you too.
There were some questions indeed. Thank you. So I'll just say a few words in Romanian. Mulțumesc pentru întrebări. Va trebui să răspund în engleză, dar dacă e ceva neclar, vă pot explica după ce se termină panelul. All right, so I just wanted to add one thing on how to reach the education sector, because indeed you have perfectly well replied. I have just heard of a couple of practices from trade unions that I found very interesting. Like there are trade unions who set up apps, so for mobile phones that students can use, and that were even different, one for parents, one for students. And this is basically a way to reach the young populations, actually the workers that will come in the future on the labor market. Also events, trade unions going in school to inform the students, particularly the students who are reaching working age, like 15 and 16 years old. And indeed, I think it's very important for young people to know their rights, because in many cases they end up on the labor market and they don't know exactly where to find out this information and who can protect them. So I can only encourage reaching out to the youth. On the minimum wage in Romania, now, when the Commission will look at how the member states implement the Minimum Wage Directive, what's important is that they have transposed the directive into the national legislation. So from what I know, Romania has a minimum wage law. The court now has annulled a part of the directive, the criteria from the directive, but the Romanian law is still in force. So unless it's being changed by the legislator, the law is still in force. So one would need to look in the law what it contains and if how it works actually with the update mechanism, which is also a part that was annulled by the court. Indeed, as long as the law is conforming to the directive, then the Commission cannot launch an infringement procedure. But like I said, this is just an assumption, because one would need to really look into the details of the case and check carefully what's happening. So I could not argue against what the EVP said. This is correct, but I do not know all the details of what is in the legislation or what is going on between the discussions at the political level. I think we had a question from Croatia. Formal CBAs, how to present. I would point here to representativeness criteria. And there is a provision in the Council recommendation on strengthening social dialogue in the EU that invites the member states, when they use representativeness criteria, to make sure that they are objective, they are transparent, and then they are discussed with the social partners. So I think this is definitely a tool that you can use to fight against the phenomenon of yellow unions and so on. Yeah,
that's a good idea. If I may add also to this question. Sorry, I forgot that there were more questions that just that one. That's absolutely right. So use the representativeness criteria. In Slovakia, it's situation absolutely clear. When there are two trade unions in one company, the biggest one, the biggest one has the right to make collective bargaining, and at the European level, by the European legislation, we can create environment. We can set up some framework, something like that. But the implementation is up to us. I mean, ordinary trade unionists or politicians at the national level, etc., etc. So I don't want to say that it is easy. However, partially it's simply up to us to convince workers that not that organization, but another organization represents their needs much better, and thus to improve the position at the company level. However, I absolutely understand what you were asking, and I think that it's it's all, I mean, the soft tool may be used also by us as a politicians. For example, me, always when I'm invited by management of any company to visit, for visit, immediately I try to manage a meeting with trade union representatives as well. And I think that it is very important to show that the management that for me, similarly important partner at the company level is the trade union organization as a manager compared to the position of management of the company. So if you can somehow mobilize also the Croatian politicians to do it this same way and openly, for example, to label the yellow trade union like a yellow trade union, I think that also this soft, yeah, I know, not easy, but that's our, yeah, okay, yeah, or non-active or something like that. Sorry, so to make trade union is much more active is simply our job, not the job of European parliamentarians or people from the Commission. And the last point to the question of non-standard working relations. Unfortunately, it is a big challenge, and I don't have the answer like this. I mean, very easy, very clear, very short answer on that. Yesterday, Thursday. Yesterday, the ample committee of the parliament adopted the report on subcontracting chains, and what we did in this report, we asked the Commission to develop and to present to the Parliament the particular legislation, which will, in different ways, create the proper environment, let's say, which will regulate the subcontracting in the European Union. And one of principles we put to our report is the joint and several liability of main contractor for the working conditions of all subcontractors' employees, including those who work as a self-employed person. So I hope that this can be one way. That means to apply at least some of, let's say, working conditions rules to the self-employed person, similarly as employees. And another issue, just the last sentence. Another issue is to change our approach. I mean, approach of trade unions, and to think how to mobilize these people working in these non-standard forms, how to mobilize them to unionize themselves, and how to take them on board of the trade unions organizations.
Thank you very much. Oliver, you would have also the floor now. I would ask you to keep it rather short because we have a very important next agenda topic, which is called lunch. And Oliver, please go ahead.
I think the answer is, of course, we want to have an effective European and national framework for doing our work, but it's still our work. So, and I think that's really why we in UNI Europa focus on the organizing aspect. I'll give you an example. In a very important European institution, not based here in Brussels, there was for many years a small trade union with not many members. And their main argument was, we're a European institution, there's a right for us to be heard by the employers, and they need to respect us and implement everything what is European policy, not legislation, but policy. And there was not somewhat ignored. And we had a discussion over lunch, and I was talking with one of the trade union colleagues and said, look, you need to grow. And when you grow, they will listen to you if you have more than 50% or something like this. By chance, the HR head was walking by. I said, yeah, of course. And then this institution screwed up. They basically destroyed the pension system. So within a year, from about 10% membership, they rose to 60% membership. And this gives you a totally different negotiating power than before. So what we need to do, and there we need to support you, how can we actually bring this strength in there? But we need legislation for this as well. I don't want, I mean, and this is Vasilis' example from Romania. We don't want to have a situation where we have to go back to the 19th century. The law is against us, so we basically have to ignore the law and go forward. What we want to have in Europe, we want to have a framework which is conducive to collective bargaining and not stopping it. And when we talk about collective bargaining, the right to strike is included. If you don't have the right to strike, then collective bargaining rights are very limited, because you were describing it, Vasily. I mean, the employer said, yeah, I'm happily negotiating with you, and our conclusion is we never ever will agree with you. That's not collective bargaining. So as a last resort, you need to push the employers. And we don't really want to have a state intervention saying, look, I mean, you need to have an agreement, and if you don't get one, the state tells you what to do. We don't want this. We have the autonomy of the social partners, and that means in the consequence, in the end, you need to have an effective right to strike. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. I think I wanted to open up for a second round, but I don't think we have the time to do that. So I'm hoping that maybe you will stay for lunch shortly, and maybe some people can come for some questions. I have a last gift to give. So as Oliver already said, we made a card deck with policy solutions to strengthen collective bargaining. So if you're bored at some point and you want to leaf through them, feel free to do that. Lunch is served now, and I'm just looking at Fiona, at what point do we reconvene?
Thanks a lot, everybody. Yes, we have lunch now for about 45 minutes, an hour. You're welcome to stay with us for lunch. And then we are back here at, let's say, 1:15. Lunch is here, but if you want to take a walk, also welcome. We'll be back here with the next panel about the finance sector.
And I would like to finish maybe with a round of applause for our speakers and guests.